In a universe where an ancient alien civilization bred themselves for mathematical perfection over millennia, they encounter humans, a species whose flawed asymmetry and embrace of imperfection leads to unprecedented creative breakthroughs, forcing the aliens to question everything they believed about progress. Thank you for the feedback. I'll proceed with the first 500-word section using unique character names. The grand computational chamber of the Arithmax gleamed with crystalline precision, every surface polished to exactly 42.7 degrees of reflectivity, the mathematically perfect angle for both aesthetics and function. Chief Calculator Phi Zero adjusted his geometrically tailored robes, each fold creating precisely equal triangles that cascaded down his tall, silver-scaled form. Another species claiming to have achieved computational enlightenment, he announced to the assembly of perfect numbers, his voice modulated to exactly 440 hertz, the universal constant of harmony. The massive holographic displays surrounding them showed statistics, equations, and evolutionary charts of every species they'd evaluated over 10 millennia. Grand Equationer Vecnol tilted her perfectly symmetrical head, the neural crystals embedded in her scalp catching the light in calculated patterns. Their application was unusual, she noted, pulling up the submission. They answered our standard 1,000-variable equation with, and I quote, "Have you tried turning it off and on again?" A ripple of disturbance passed through the assembly, their synchronized breathing pattern disrupting for precisely 2.718 seconds before realigning. Humans. Phi Zero pronounced the word carefully, as if it might disrupt the chamber's perfect acoustic balance. They achieved faster-than-light travel by, apparently, eyeballing it. The chamber doors slid open with mathematical precision, admitting the human delegation. The Arithmax collectively adjusted their optical sensors, struggling to process what they were seeing. Ambassador ZYX Starweaver strode in wearing what appeared to be a holographic jacket that shifted colors in completely random patterns. Their hair defied every known law of geometric arrangement, somehow pointing in 7 different directions simultaneously. Behind them, science attaché Quantum Moon Whisper was attempting to juggle 3 different tablets while drinking something labeled triple shot espresso, now with extra chaos. "Sup," ZYX greeted, promptly sitting cross-legged on the sacred floor of infinite calculations. "Love what you've done with the place. Very straight." The assembly's neural crystals flickered in distress. These humans weren't just asymmetrical. They seemed to actively embrace disorder. "You claim to have achieved level 7 computational mastery," Phi Zero stated, displaying the human's application. "Yet your proof consists of a TikTok video of someone solving a Rubik's Cube while blindfolded and reciting pi backwards." "Oh yeah, that's quantum. Show 'em." ZYX grinned. The science attaché, without looking up from their tablets, pulled out a Rubik's Cube and solved it one-handed, while simultaneously drawing a perfect freehand circle with the other. That's not how any of this works," Vecnol protested, her perfectly aligned neural pathways struggling to process the scene. "But it did work," ZYX pointed out, now somehow lounging horizontally across a chair designed for vertical use only. "Just like our FDL drives work. Just like our quantum computers work. Just like this jacket works. By the way, anyone want one? We're thinking of starting a galactic fashion line. We call it symmetry. I barely know her." Phi Zero's geometric robes developed their first wrinkle in 3 centuries. "You will be tested," he declared, attempting to restore order to the situation. 3 trials of perfect computation and precise. Cool, ZYX interrupted, already typing on their phone. "Just updating my spacegram. Caption, about to show some aliens that chaos is just math having fun. Think that needs more emojis." The assembly watched in horror as their perfectly ordered world began its first descent into beautiful chaos. The Arithmax high computation arena stretched infinitely in all directions, its chrome surfaces arranged in perfect Fibonacci spirals. Preparation pods lined the walls, each one calibrated to provide optimal conditions for mathematical contemplation. Chief Calculator Phi Zero stood at the precisely centered podium, his neural crystals pulsing with controlled anticipation. The trials, he announced, will test your species' mastery of universal constants. First, you must calculate the gravitational harmonics of a dying neutron star. Second, you will optimize the quantum entanglement patterns of 1,000 parallel universes. Finally, quick question. ZYX Starweaver interrupted, currently attempting to balance a pencil on their nose while solving a crossword puzzle. Are snacks allowed? Because Quantum brought their famous chaos cookies, and let me tell you, they really live up to the name. Science attaché Quantum Moonwhisper looked up from where they were somehow taking apart and reassembling one of the Arithmax's sacred calculation engines. The filling exists in a quantum superposition until you bite into it. Really keeps you guessing. Vecnol's perfectly symmetrical features developed their first ever microscopic twitch. This is not a culinary event. This is the most rigorous mathematical evaluation in the known universe. Species trained for millennia to attempt these trials. Oh, neat, ZYX replied, having successfully balanced not just a pencil but now an entire office supply store's worth of items on various body parts. We're kind of doing this on our lunch break. Speaking of which, anyone try Earth Energy drinks yet? We've got this new flavor called Probability Storm. Side effects may include temporary omniscience and spontaneous tap dancing. The assembly of perfect numbers watched in mounting horror as Quantum cracked open a can that seemed to flicker in and out of existence. The liquid inside glowed with colors that shouldn't exist in this dimension. The trials, Phi Zero insisted, his voice modulating to the frequency of supreme authority, will begin with counter-proposal, ZYX announced, now somehow sitting upside down on the ceiling. Instead of just doing math problems, why not make this interesting? Let's solve real-world challenges. You know, the messy ones where the numbers don't line up perfectly and you have to get creative. A collective gasp echoed through the arena. The word creative had never been uttered in these sacred halls before. For example, Quantum added, their hands flying over the disassembled calculation engine, which was now somehow running 400% more efficiently despite having several parts left over. We could tackle climate stabilization on binary star systems, or design hyperspace lanes that account for cosmic jazz improvisation. Cosmic jazz improvisation? Vecno repeated each word as if it physically pained her perfect neural pathways. Oh yeah, ZYX grinned, falling gracefully from the ceiling to land in a perfect helix spiral. You haven't lived until you've surfed a quantum wave while the universe beatboxes. But hey, if you're not up for it. The assembly erupted into confused calculations. On one hand, their entire civilization was built on perfect mathematical order. On the other hand, these humans had somehow achieved computational feats that should have been impossible, all while apparently treating the fundamental laws of physics as loose suggestions. Very well, Phi Zero declared, his robes reorganizing themselves into emergency backup patterns. We accept your modification to the trials. 3 challenges: environmental engineering, quantum architecture, and universal problem solving. But they must be completed within our arena under our observation. Cool, ZYX replied, already setting up what appeared to be a small coffee shop in one corner of the arena. Just need to fuel up first. Anyone want a non-Euclidean cappuccino? The foam makes shapes that shouldn't be possible in our dimension. As the humans prepared in their distinctly chaotic way, Vecno leaned toward Phi Zero. They cannot possibly succeed. Their methods defy every principle of computational perfection we've established over 10,000 years. Precisely, Phi Zero responded, watching as Quantum somehow used a coffee machine to prove a new theorem about space-time curvature. Which is why we must understand how they do it. For the first time in our history, the equation doesn't balance. Little did they know, humanity's greatest strength was about to turn their perfectly ordered world upside down. Possibly literally, given ZYX's apparent disregard for gravitational conventions. The environmental engineering challenge began with a holographic display of a dying binary star system. Its unstable orbits threaten 3 inhabited worlds, their civilizations facing extinction within a standard galactic year. The solution requires perfect gravitational harmonics, Vecnell explained, her neural crystals synchronizing with the arena's display. We must calculate. Is that star humming in B-flat? Quantum Moonwhisper interrupted, their head tilted as if listening to cosmic music no one else could hear. They had modified their tablet into what appeared to be a combination of a synthesizer and a quantum probability calculator, held together with colorful duct tape and optimism. Stars don't hum, Phi-Zero stated flatly. They emit precisely calculated electromagnetic. No, they definitely hum, ZYX Starweaver insisted, now conducting an invisible orchestra with one hand while manipulating holographic star patterns with the other. This whole system is basically one big jazz band having a really bad day. The timing's all off. Watch this. Before the assembly could protest, ZYX pulled out what appeared to be an ancient Earth instrument, a saxophone made of materials that shouldn't exist in normal space-time. What are you? Vecnell began, but was cut off by the most chaotic yet somehow harmonious sound the Arithmax had ever experienced. The saxophone's notes, completely random by any mathematical standard, began to resonate with the binary star's electromagnetic frequencies. Quantum, catching on immediately, started manipulating their jury-rigged quantum synthesizer, adding layers of what they called cosmic funk to the mixture. This is not how you stabilize a star system, Phi-Zero protested, his geometric robes developing unprecedented wrinkles. There are equations, precise calculations. Sometimes, ZYX said between saxophone riffs, you gotta let the universe dance. To the assembly's collective shock, the holographic stars began to stabilize. Their erratic orbits smoothed out, not into perfect circles as the Arithmax would have designed, but into an elegant, asymmetrical dance that was somehow more stable than any purely mathematical solution. But how? Vecnell demanded, her perfect neural pathways struggling to process what she was witnessing. Your calculations. No calculations, Quantum grinned, their synthesizer now projecting patterns that look suspiciously like musical notes into the star system's gravitational field. We just listened to what the system wanted to be and helped it find its groove. Stars are like people, sometimes they just need a good beat. Young Arithmax observers in the crowd began swaying slightly to the cosmic rhythm, their neural crystals pulsing in decidedly non-standard patterns. Several quickly stopped when elder calculators glared at them, but the damage was done. Something new had entered their perfectly ordered world. Rhythm. The stars are now stable, ZYX announced, transitioning into what they called a victory scat on the saxophone. And bonus, we've given 3 civilizations their first introduction to jazz. I'm thinking of calling this piece Binary Boogaloo in B-flat. Phi-Zero consulted the measurement arrays, his perfect posture slipping slightly. The system is functional, but this solution is temporary, chaotic, unpredictable. Just like life, Quantum interjected, now teaching a young Arithmax how to play air guitar. The universe doesn't want to be perfect. It wants to groove. And check this out, ZYX added, pulling up new holographic displays. The civilizations in the system, they're already riffing off our solution. One species is building orbital platforms that dance with their sun's new rhythms. Another is developing music-based space drives. The third one starting an intergalactic battle of the bands. The assembly of perfect numbers watched in mixed horror and fascination as their holographic displays filled with images of celebrations across the saved worlds. Species that had lived in fear of mathematical extinction were now hosting what appeared to be the galaxy's first stellar rave. One trial down, ZYX announced, somehow having acquired a glittering jacket that violated several laws of light reflection. Anyone up for cosmic karaoke before the next challenge? I do a mean rendition of Supernova Nights. Vecnell turned to Phi-Zero, her perfect symmetry, showing signs of stress. They turned the most precise art of stellar engineering into a concert. Yes, Phi Zero replied, watching as more young Arithmax began secretly tapping their appendages to the lingering cosmic rhythms. And somehow, it worked better than any solution we've calculated in 1,000 years. The stars continued their new dance, their light pulsing with a rhythm that would forever change how the galaxy thought about perfection. The quantum architecture chamber materialized around them, its surfaces shifting through perfect geometric patterns. Holographic blueprints of the Arithmax's greatest architectural achievements floated in the air, cities designed with mathematical precision, where every angle served a computational purpose. The challenge, Vecnel announced, her voice echoing with perfect resonance, is to design a self-sustaining arcology capable of housing 1 million beings in complete computational harmony. ZYX Starweaver, now wearing what appeared to be a holographic hard hat that occasionally phased through different dimensions, studied the existing designs with exaggerated contemplation. Bit boxy, isn't it? Like living in a giant spreadsheet. Each structure achieves perfect geometric efficiency, Phi Zero explained, pride evident in his precisely modulated voice. Every resident experiences exactly equal living conditions, down to the number of photons reaching their habitation units. Quantum Moon Whisper had already begun sketching on their quantum-enhanced tablet, occasionally throwing holographic designs into the air where they exploded into cascades of impossible shapes. But where's the fun in that? People aren't identical math problems to be solved. They're wonderful, messy chaos generators who need room to express themselves. Chaos is inefficient, Vecnel stated, watching in horror as Quantum's designs began to incorporate curves that seemed to laugh at Euclidean geometry. Inefficient? ZYX grinned, pulling up their own holographic interface. Watch this. Quantum. Remember that thing we did with the coral reefs on Europa? The two humans began working in what appeared to be complete disorder. Their designs grew like living things, organic structures spiraling upward in patterns that simultaneously respected and defied physical laws. Quantum's tablet occasionally made sounds like a purring cat, while ZYX had somehow turned their interface into a virtual pottery wheel. What is this? Phi Zero demanded, his neural crystals struggling to process the emerging structure. We call it biomimetic quantum architecture, Quantum explained, while using their tablet stylus like a conductor's baton. Instead of forcing everyone to live in perfect boxes, we let the building grow like a coral reef or a forest canopy. Each section adapts to its residents' needs. The holographic model expanded, revealing interior spaces that flowed like river systems. Gardens sprouted in seemingly random patterns that, upon closer inspection, formed perfect microclimate zones. Transportation systems move like blood through veins, automatically adjusting to usage patterns. But the energy efficiency, Vecnel began, is 300% better than your current designs. ZYX interrupted, now somehow sculpting additional features out of thin air. Nature's been solving these problems for billions of years. We just added some quantum computing and a splash of artistic license. The assembly watched in growing fascination as the design took final form. It resembled nothing so much as a living city, its structures flowing and adapting like a coral reef in a cosmic current. Young Arithmax observers began approaching the hologram, their neural crystals pulsing with unprecedented patterns of excitement. See, these are regular spaces, Quantum pointed out, highlighting areas that defy geometric prediction. They're quantum uncertainty zones. The architecture actually adapts based on probability waves of resident behavior. The more people use a space creatively, the more the building evolves to enhance that creativity. You've turned architecture into a participatory art form, one young Arithmax whispered, earning shocked looks from the elders. Exactly, ZYX beamed, adding what appeared to be a zero-gravity dance studio to the upper levels. A city shouldn't just be a place to exist. It should be a place to live, to create, to explore. Watch what happens when we add the sonic resonance chambers. At a gesture, the entire holographic structure began humming with the same cosmic frequencies they discovered in the binary star system. The building wasn't just housing. It was an instrument, played by the very lives of its inhabitants. This is... Vecnol paused, her perfect symmetry wavering as she searched for words. This is not architecture. This is... Evolution, Quantum finished, making final adjustments to their design. Just like life itself, perfect order is stagnation. Real perfection is finding beauty in the chaos. Phi Zero studied the completed design, his geometric robe subtly shifting into less rigid patterns. The efficiency metrics are undeniable, but this level of uncertainty, of constant change, is exactly what makes it work, ZYX concluded, already starting to set up what looks suspiciously like a quantum coffee shop in one corner of their design. Now, who's up for testing out the zero-gravity poetry slam space? I've got some great verses about non-Euclidean geometry that will really bend your neural crystals. The assembly watched as their understanding of perfect architecture began to crumble, and something far more interesting took its place. The final chamber of the Arithmax arena transformed into what they call the infinite problem matrix, a space where pure thought took physical form. Crystalline equations floated through the air like schools of mathematical fish, each representing an unsolved challenge that had stumped the galaxy's greatest minds. Your final trial, Phi Zero announced, his voice carrying a hint of anticipation, is to solve the paradox of unified existence. He gestured to a particularly complex cluster of equations that pulse with quantum uncertainty. Every species faces the same fundamental question: how to unify perfect order with the chaos of consciousness. ZYX Starweaver, now inexplicably wearing a smoking jacket with patches that displayed different moments in space-time, examined the equations while sipping from a mug labeled Schrodinger's coffee, both caffeinated and decaffeinated until observed. "See, that's your first problem," they said, reaching out to poke one of the floating equations, which made a sound like a surprise wind chime. "You're trying to solve consciousness like it's a math problem. That's like trying to explain a joke using calculus. You'll get all the components right, but miss the actual funny bit." Quantum Moonwhisper had already settled cross-legged in midair, their tablet now transformed into something that looked like a cross between a dream catcher and a quantum computer. The universe isn't a problem to be solved, they mused, fingers dancing through the equations like playing a cosmic harp. It's a jam session waiting to happen. "That makes no logical sense," Vecnol protested, though her neural crystals were pulsing with increasingly irregular patterns. "Exactly," ZYX exclaimed, now conducting the floating equations like an orchestra. "Logic is just one instrument in the universal band. Watch this, quantum. Remember that thing we did at the Intergalactic Poetry Slam when the quantum physics department challenged the Arts College?" The two humans began what could only be described as mathematical improvisation. Quantum's device started emitting sounds that somehow represented pure mathematics in musical form, while ZYX danced through the equations, rearranging them not through calculation, but through what they called vibing with the cosmic flow. The assembly watched in astonishment as the equations began to move in new patterns, interacting in ways their perfect mathematical models had never predicted. Young Arithmax observers started to sway with the rhythms of pure mathematics-turned music. "You're not solving the paradox," Phi Zero observed, though his voice carried a note of fascination. "You're dancing with it. Now you're getting it." Quantum grinned, their device now projecting what appeared to be a visual representation of consciousness itself, not as equations, but as an ever-shifting kaleidoscope of thought and feeling. The paradox isn't meant to be solved. It's meant to be experienced, explored, celebrated. The chamber filled with patterns that defied mathematical description, yet somehow made perfect sense on a level the Arithmax had never considered. Equations merged with emotions, logic danced with intuition, and the rigid boundaries between order and chaos began to blur. "But how can we quantify this?" Vecnol asked, her perfect symmetry now completely forgotten as she found herself drawn into the mathematical dance. "How can we replicate these results?" "That's just it," ZYX explained, now conducting both equations and assembly members in what they called a quantum consciousness conga line. You can't replicate consciousness because its beauty lies in its uniqueness. Every moment, every thought, every possibility is its own perfect imperfection. As if to demonstrate, they pulled out a small device that projected memories of Earth. Children laughing at jokes that made no logical sense, artists creating works that defied mathematical explanation, scientists making breakthroughs through intuitive leaps that preceded proof. Your species seeks perfect order, Quantum added softly, their device now harmonizing with the very quantum fluctuations of space-time. But the universe seeks perfect balance, a dance between order and chaos, logic and intuition, mathematics and art. The chamber had transformed. What began as a sterile problem-solving space had become a celebration of existence itself. Young Arithmax were experimenting with their own neural crystals, creating patterns that were less than perfect but somehow more than complete. We don't solve the paradox, ZYX concluded, as the chamber filled with a harmony that could be felt rather than calculated. We become part of it. Every imperfect moment, every chaotic thought, every illogical laugh. That's not a problem to solve. That's what makes the universe sing. The assembly of perfect numbers stood in silence, their world forever changed by the revelation that true perfection wasn't an equation to be solved, but a dance to be joined. The transformation of Arithmax society happened not with mathematical precision, but with the organic chaos of a blooming garden. The grand computational chamber, once a shrine to perfect order, now hosted what the humans called open mic nights for mathematical poetry. Young Arithmax began experimenting with their neural crystals in unprecedented ways. Instead of synchronizing to a single perfect frequency, they created harmonies of thought, each crystal pulsing with its own unique rhythm while contributing to a greater whole. The result was a new form of computational art that spread through their society like quantum wildfire. "Look at this!" Quantum Moonwhisper exclaimed during one particularly energetic session, as a young Arithmax named Pi Variant demonstrated how to solve complex equations through interpretive dance. They're not just accepting imperfection. They're discovering that imperfection itself is a form of perfection. The traditionalists, led by a group calling themselves the Sacred Geometers, initially resisted. They barricaded themselves in perfectly symmetrical meditation chambers, attempting to maintain their mathematical purity. But even they couldn't resist the allure of what ZYX Starweaver had dubbed quantum jazz meditation. It's not about abandoning order, ZYX explained to a group of elder calculators, while teaching them how to play computational basketball, where the hoops existed in probability states until someone attempted a shot. It's about finding the sweet spot between structure and spontaneity. Like this, watch what happens when you calculate the trajectory using both math and instinct. The assembly of perfect numbers transformed into the Council of Harmonic Diversity. Vecnol, in a move that shocked traditionalists but delighted reformers, started the galaxy's first quantum art gallery. Her neural crystals, once arranged in perfect symmetry, now formed ever-changing patterns that express mathematical concepts through pure creativity. Phi Zero, perhaps most surprisingly, became an advocate for what he called computational jazz, a new way of solving complex problems that combined rigorous mathematics with intuitive leaps. His geometric robes, now programmed with quantum uncertainty principles, shifted patterns based on his emotional state. "We thought perfection was an endpoint," he mused during the opening of the first Arithmax Human Cultural Exchange Center. "Instead, it's an endless exploration. Every imperfect moment adds another note to the universal symphony." The most dramatic change came in education. Young Arithmax were no longer taught to seek perfect solutions, but to explore perfect questions. Their training combined traditional computational precision with human concepts like brainstorming, improvisation, and the sacred art of winging it. "They've created something entirely new," Quantum observed, watching a group of Arithmax children solve quantum equations through a game that combined hopscotch with probability mechanics. Not pure logic, not pure chaos, but a beautiful dance between the two. The transformation reached its symbolic peak when the former high computation arena was renovated into the galaxy's first quantum creativity commons, a space where species from across the universe could come to explore the art of imperfect perfection. As Vecno told a reporter from the newly established Cosmic Beat newsletter, we learned that the universe's greatest calculations aren't written in numbers, but in moments of pure, unquantifiable joy. One galactic standard year later, the Arithmax homeworld had become the universe's most prestigious center for what they called quantum creative sciences. The once rigid crystalline spires of their cities now flowed like frozen music, each structure a unique harmony of mathematics and artistry. At the inauguration of the first Galactic Creative Sciences Academy, ZYX Starweaver stood before an audience that would have been unimaginable a year ago. Arithmax traditionalists sat beside quantum artists, their neural crystals pulsing in beautiful discord. Representatives from 100 species attended, drawn by rumors of a civilization that had discovered something beyond mere perfection. When we first arrived, ZYX began, their holographic graduation robes cycling through impossible colors. You asked us to prove our worth through perfect computation. Instead, we showed you something better, the perfect imperfection of being alive. The Academy itself embodied this philosophy. Its quantum architecture, designed by a team of human and Arithmax pioneers, existed in a constant state of creative evolution. Classrooms shifted based on the emotional resonance of their occupants. Research laboratories combined rigorous methodology with intuitive leaps. The central atrium featured a perpetual quantum art installation that visualized the dance between order and chaos. Quantum Moon Whisper, now the Academy's first dean of improbable innovation, demonstrated their latest invention, a quantum computing system that used emotional resonance as a core processing principle. The breakthrough came when we stopped trying to eliminate uncertainty, they explained, and started treating it as a feature, not a bug. The youngest generation of Arithmax, dubbed the Quantum Kids by amused humans, took to these new principles with particular enthusiasm. They developed mathematical games that incorporated dance, created music that expressed complex theorems, and solved previously impossible problems through what they called computational play. Phi-Zero and Vecno, once the staunchest defenders of perfect order, had become beloved professors at the Academy. Their course, The Mathematics of Joy, Finding Infinity in Imperfection, had a waiting list spanning 3 star systems. The universe, Phi-Zero often told his students, his geometric robes now flowing with playful asymmetry, is not a problem to be solved, but a miracle to be experienced. Every imperfect moment adds to its perfection. The assembly chambers, transformed into the Academy's main auditorium, still bore the mathematical precision of their original design. But now they also featured quantum jazz clubs, probability poetry corners, and meditation spaces where beings could contemplate the beauty of uncertainty. As the inauguration ceremony concluded, ZYX and Quantum unveiled their final gift to their Arithmax friends, a quantum musical instrument that allowed users to play the very frequencies of space-time. Its first performance, a duet between a young Arithmax and a human child, brought tears to eyes and equivalent emotional responses to other sensory organs throughout the audience. The piece was titled, simply, The Perfect Imperfection of Being. In the years that followed, the Arithmax would be known throughout the galaxy not just for their computational mastery, but for their unique understanding of how precision and chaos, mathematics and art, logic and love could dance together in endless, beautiful possibility. As Vecno wrote in her best-selling memoir Equations of the Heart, we sought to perfect the universe until humans taught us that the universe was perfect precisely because it could never be perfected.